Is banking while black a real phenomena in America? Stay with us and we'll let you know.
That Corbin and Corbett legal team fighting for the rights of the people. That father-daughter team investing in the youth when the system ain't treating them equal. Providing truth for our people, we able to reach them. So anytime you get accused for a crime and Lord knows you ain't do it, we here to get you through it. Exemplifying prudence and glorifying God, making sure you're compensated for other people's doings. Our vision is to be one of the best. We're small enough to focus on your matter throughout the neighborhoods of Dallas. Working constantly and making sure your rights are protected. A firm team of lawyers, aggressive, effective. A team that has your back in the courtroom. Two well-spoken black lawyers in the courtroom. Investing time and resources when it's evident that you were treated wrong. Now you walking out of Dallas courtroom with a settlement. Corbin and Corbett, the father-daughter legal tag team that has your back in the courtroom. Our purpose is simple. To obtain the favorable outcome for each client and glorify Christ in all we do. Our vision is to be one of the best and most...
Hello and welcome back, Legal Rebels. This is Attorney Augustus Corbett, a.k.a. the Minister of Justice, and with me I have...
Attorney Chloe Corbett, a.k.a. the Duchess of Justice.
And we are the Defiant Lawyers. We provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system. If you're not a subscriber, my question is, why not? What is going on? Why are you cheating yourself like that? You need to become a legal rebel and get all this great information. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so that your bell will get ring every time we upload a video or every time we go live. All right. So I am so looking forward to this show today. And you already see what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about banking while black in America. And we're specifically going to analyze the Ryan Coogler incident that occurred in Atlanta, Georgia. A real live videotaped banking while black. So we're going to talk about that today. In fact, we're going to do it a little different. What we're going to do today is we're going to play a video that Chloe made where she did an in-depth analysis of the Ryan Coogler, I hope I'm saying it right, incident. And we're going to kind of just talk about that as we listen to that video. So we're going to hear a little bit of the video, then we're going to stop, hear a little bit more, stop, so that we can get additional commentary from both Chloe and I. And the reason why are we doing this? Why do we do this every week? Because we are, to my knowledge, one of the only one, or certainly one, maybe the only one, a YouTube channel that brings you legal analysis from the African-American perspective. We bring you the law from an African-American perspective. And I hope that you have seen the value of this. And if you haven't, I'm telling you, by the end of this broadcast, you're going to see why we do what we do, why we are in the trenches fighting the good fight of faith every day of our lives. You know, as attorneys, when they gave us that bar card, when we passed the bar exam and they gave us the bar card, and we then were able to, get into the courtrooms, get into the judge's chambers, we were then privy to what goes on behind the scenes that most African Americans, most Americans never see. And so Chloe and I, we feel the responsibility to empower African Americans with what we know about the law, because the law tremendously impacts our life, and you're going to see that. You're going to see that in this video. So I'm looking forward to it, Chloe. How are you doing?
That was such a wonderful introduction, Daddy, and really explaining to people why we do what we do on this YouTube channel and the perspective that we want to bring as Black attorneys in talking about Black issues. That is the perspective that we want to bring to the YouTube space, to social media, and etc. So we hope that you all will learn from this and get information from this. And to answer your question, Dad, I am doing wonderful. It is a beautiful Saturday day, Saturday morning, afternoon, excuse me. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon.
Well, actually, the time does go forward tonight, actually.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm doing wonderful. I'm ready to get into this topic and really break it down for everyone listening.
Well, let me just brag on you a little bit. We're going to hear a video that you sat down and did yourself about this topic. And I'm not just saying this because I'm your father. Maybe a little bit. Okay. Maybe just a little. But no, this is your space, Chloe. This is your space. An attorney focused on civil rights, fighting for the rights of the African American people, the legal, constitutional, statutory, common law rights of Black folks. I mean, this is your space. This is it right here. And this video is going to show that. This video is going to show how it has all come together for you after 31 years of, going through law school, college, being raised in the home of several preachers, being raised in the home of a man who is impassioned about social justice and, racial justice, biblical justice. It has all come to fruition. And folks are going to see that in this video that we're going to play. Now, once again, we're not just going to hit play and let it play all the way through. We are going to upload a version where you can do that, where people can just listen to it the way they want to listen to it. But what we're going to do in this particular show is we're going to play it and we're going to stop it at certain points just to highlight and make sure you all understand, you legal rebels understand the things that Chloe are communicating. Because we're lawyers, we say this stuff every day, we study this every day, we read this every day, we eat, sleep, and breathe this every single day. So we say things amongst each other that are just basically legalese, right? But what seems to be really simple to us, we know are not. You don't go to law school 3 years because the stuff is simple and easy and so forth. You don't. This is hard, complicated stuff, all right? What we do is we try to break it down in bite-sized pieces so that you, our community of legal rebels, can understand it. All right, so I think I've said all there is to say about it for now. Let's hit the play button and let's start. So when I feel motivated to stop it, I'll stop it, Chloe. And when you feel like, hey, let me, just let me know, okay?
I will.
All right, here we go.
That has been coined and that has been around in our culture. Hey guys, what's up? This is attorney Chloe Corbett, also known as the Duchess of Justice. I am one half of the Defiant Lawyers YouTube show here on YouTube. You might notice something different. I'm here by myself today. Isn't that exciting, guys? I don't have my dad and partner here with me today. but I did want to film this video to talk about a topic that has been trending in the news. And it's something that we are personally aware of because we're litigating this topic. And I'll get to that in a second. But first, let me introduce myself because I know some of you may have not have seen my face before. So you may be wondering, who is she? Well, like I said, my name is Chloe Corbett. I'm a practicing attorney here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I do a lot of civil rights, personal injury, criminal defense cases, and I am one half of the Defiant Lawyers. We provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower our community to defy this unjust legal system. So let's get into today's topic. Today, I'm going to be talking about banking while black. This is a phenomenon that has been occurring in this country for many, many, many years. You may have heard of something called driving while black. This is a term that has been coined and that has been around in our culture for a number of years. And basically what it is, black Americans who are driving, who are lawfully driving on our streets and highways are unjustly, unfairly stopped by the police and unfairly targeted when we're driving. And a lot of times it can lead to an arrest because we are black. So this has occurred in all.
All right, so I think we, I didn't mean to catch you with your mouth open. Look like you're in horror about something.
Or looking like I'm about to sneeze.
Oh, about to sneeze, so I just moved it on just a little bit. But let's stop right here. And driving while black is a huge situation in this country. It really is. So it's basic racial profiling. And I remember 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I got to give credit to Reverend Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton started bringing a lot of attention to the issue of racial profiling. That is where police officers stop African Americans merely because they are black. So police officers have a practice of focusing on black people. And so that's why people get stopped, a lot of blacks who've not done anything oftentimes. And it's just because they're black. It may be because they're driving a nice car, maybe because they're in the wrong neighborhood. It may be by the wrong neighborhood, I mean two things. Either they're in a neighborhood that's high crime, or they may be in a neighborhood where they're not supposed to be, okay? They're in maybe a high dollar, predominantly white neighborhood, and here they're a black person in that neighborhood, so police officers just stop them, basically harass them, find out why they're in that neighborhood. Now, here's the problem. The problem with that is because blacks are being targeted like that, Chloe, that means there's going to be increased interaction between the police and black folks, which means a lot of black folks are going to end up getting charged with crimes that other populations don't get charged with. And unfortunately, sometimes those stops just go off the rail, ending up in a black person getting killed or assaulted by a police officer just because they were stopped because they were black.
You brought up such a good point that I want people to really take note of. So because of this racial profiling that you just described, this targeted racial profiling by law enforcement against black people, that increases the amount of contact that black people and law enforcement have. So the number of contact, so whereas a white American may only have, interactions with law enforcement once or twice a year, the average black American will have a lot higher frequency of contact with law enforcement. And because they already view us in a discriminatory way, that leads to increased arrests and increased charges. So a lot of people are asking, why are so many black people arrested? Why are there such high
Right,
interactions with law enforcement? It's because they target us, which increases the frequency of contact that we have with them.
right,
That leads to the higher charges and the higher arrests. So
right.
you guys keep that in mind too as we continue with this video. And it's not
Yes.
just driving while black too, is coming to our homes, being out at a park, being at the grocery store, etc.
Yeah. In fact, even Senator Tim Scott, a Republican African American senator from South Carolina, even he said publicly that he had gotten stopped 14 times in 1 year. I think it was. I think it was 14 times, and he attributed it. He attributed those stops to racial profiling. So even he has admitted it.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear a little more.
Of our lives, whether it be we're at home sleeping, whether we're out shopping, whether we're at the grocery store, whether we're
Shopping while black, banking while black, as you were just saying, Chloe, sleeping while black, wearing a hoodie while black, jogging while black, sitting while black, golfing while black, walking the dog while black, eating while black, moving in while black, studying while black, jogging. Did we say that? Because I think about Ahmaud Arbery while black,
Yep.
and sometimes just doing nothing while black.
Yep. So this profiling, all of these things that are normal tasks for white Americans, because we're racially profiled, because we're censored out for potentially engaging in criminal conduct, that increases our frequency with the police, which then gets our numbers up with arrests and charges.
Yeah, and so as you said earlier, if someone says, well, why is it that blacks seem to have more incidents of arrest and prosecutions and so forth? Because we're being targeted, not because we're more criminal.
Yep.
I want you to hear that. Not because we have some sort of criminal gene, but it's because we're being targeted. If you were to target any community, just target that. If the police were to target any community, their incidents of arrest, their incidents of prosecution, of being jailed, all would increase.
Yep. Simply at a park, there have been so many times that just being black has been weaponized against us and used against us to be unfairly targeted by law enforcement, by the government, and even private companies. And today, banking while black, we are talking about a private company, a private bank, discriminating against its black patrons simply because they are black. But recently, there's been a story where a famous black director, Ryan Coogler, he was the victim.
I want folks to see, as this arrow suggests or points out, that not only was he arrested, not only was he suspected of robbing a bank, that officer has his gun. He unholstered his pistol on Ryan Coogler.
I did not notice that. That is my first time noticing that the officer unholstered his pistol and had it by his side. Wow. That is powerful.
And a couple other observations. This officer's black. The bank teller was black. Most of the responding officers were black. So don't think, because someone would say, well, how can that be racial profiling? We define racial profiling in terms of the race of the victim, not in
Yes.
terms of the race of the profiler.
Yes.
We don't care what race the profiler is. The issue
Yes.
is, what is the race of the one being profiled? And that overwhelmingly, disproportionately, are black folks.
And notice too, before you move on, Dad, notice what Ryan Coogler is wearing: a hoodie, a beanie, and now because of COVID, he's wearing a mask. And it takes me to back to Trayvon Martin, which is where a black man in a hoodie became weaponized. And you know, that's when victim shaming came. Well, he shouldn't have been out at night walking in a hoodie, or he shouldn't be in the bank in a hoodie with a beanie on. So they begin to attack just wearing mere articles of clothing as well, and it becomes weaponized against us too.
But we can't move on. You said something. You said something that I hadn't noticed. You said something that I hadn't noticed. He's also wearing a mask. What do bank robbers typically have? A mask,
Mask.
right? And there has already been conversation about whether blacks would be targeted even more so from the mask we wear because of COVID. And that probably played into this.
Yeah.
And again, the teller was a black woman. And the officer who unholstered his pistol and is ready to shoot him is a black police officer. In fact, I didn't know this. Paul Butler, in his book Chokehold, said most black folks, I did not know this, most black folks are shot by black police officers, more so than white police officers. That's what Professor Paul Butler of Georgetown said in his book, Chokehold. Get a copy of it. Let's move on.
Of Banking While Black. And I want to go through all of those details, go through the story with you, analyze it, and then I'm going to briefly talk about our case that we're litigating and what you can do, the legal remedies that you can take if you've ever been a victim of Banking While Black. So I am going to reference a New York Times article that was written about this incident involving Ryan Coogler. I want to make sure that you all know the timeline and that you all know exactly what happened, okay? So on January 7th, a couple of months ago, Mr. Coogler, who is best known for directing the phenomenal Marvel film Black Panther, was detained and handcuffed as he
Did you see him
attempted
pull
to
his pistol
withdraw
out
money.
right
I see it right there.
there? That's no, not there. He was right there. He's pulling out his handcuffs.
Okay.
Okay, let me back it up a little bit.
Oh. Okay. Who is best known for directing the phenomenal Marvel film Black Panther.
He's pulling it right there.
Yep. Clear as day.
Clear as day. He's getting it right now.
Was
And he has it in his hand right now.
detained and handcuffed as he attempted to withdraw money from his bank account with Bank of America. So let's go through it. Mr. Coogler went to the bank teller line and he handed the teller a withdrawal slip asking for $12,000 in cash. He also had a note with the withdrawal slip where he asked the teller to be, quote, discreet when handing him the cash, end quote.
Okay. All this is juicy, Chloe.
It is.
Every bit of this is juicy that you're bringing out. So talk to us a little bit about that. So he walks up, black man in a hoodie, requests
In a beanie.
Requests $12,000 and gives the teller a note and said, do it discreetly. Okay, come on, okay. So, under normal circumstances, that would be suspicious. What makes this less suspicious is that he identified himself. He gave them the proper account number, the proper ID, etc. So this, tell me if I'm wrong, but this teller knew that this was his bank account and that this was his money. Am I right or wrong?
That's true. He presented the bank teller with his California state ID. He presented the bank teller with his debit card and the withdrawal slip and that note. Now, look, I was a bank teller many years ago in college. I wasn't a bank teller too long. I have friends who have been bank tellers, and there has been some criticism about Mr. Coogler presenting a note and how, in popular culture and movies, that presenting a note with words written on it is a telltale sign that a person is trying to rob a bank. So that is some criticism that I've heard. It's been circulating along with the outrage on how Mr. Coogler was treated. But I'd say I take the same point as you, that if a person was trying to rob a bank and they were going to do so via a note, they would not provide validated ID, and they will also not provide their bank account and make sure to identify themselves. So, in my estimation as a former teller, all the teller had to do was examine the state issued ID, take his bank account information, validate and corroborate the information that was on the ID with his bank account, and this could have been resolved. If she further had an issue, then she simply could have called her manager and had the manager come in and just make sure that this is the correct person. But she overplayed her hand, and she discriminated against Mr. Coogler by immediately thinking that he was a robber and then calling the police. And I don't know if we have this audio, Dad, but there has been 911 the 911 call that this teller made was released, and it was just astounding the way she was talking. Even at the
No,
end of that now,
I don't have it. Describe how she said it and what happened.
so in the 911 call, she tells the 911 operator, and I'm paraphrasing, I have someone here. He's written on a note that he wants to withdraw money discreetly. I told my manager I don't know what to do, so I wanted to call 911. The 911 operator then proceeds to ask her questions. Well, did you try to validate his identity? Does he have a weapon on him? The teller says no, I don't think so. Did he threaten you? The teller says no. Um, and at the end of that call, after the teller just saying I just felt unsafe and it was weird that he presented a note, the 911 operator then says, well, he could have just been trying to be discreet, but I will have police come out there anyway.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And that again, this teller, this teller was a black woman.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Chief. Glad to have you with us today.
What's up?
All right. So, man. All right, let's keep moving.
Mr. Coogler also had his California state ID as well as his Bank of America debit card when he approached the teller. The teller then received an alert notification from Mr. Coogler's account, and quickly told her manager that he was trying to rob the bank branch. So let's stop there. Think about this, guys. You are trying to perform a simple transaction. You are trying to get your own money out of your own account, and you think that this is going to be another regular day. This is the situation that Mr. Coogler was in. He goes to the line. Picture yourself going into the line.
Chloe, we're gonna get back, but I just noticed for the first time that it looks like Ryan said a little prayer. Did you see that?
He put his hands together.
Looks like he said a little prayer.
Yeah.
Let's look at it again.
And you think that this is going to be another regular day. This is the situation that Mr. Coogler was in. He goes.
Look at that. That makes me emotional.
I'm sure he saw the officer have the gun when he turned around.
That makes me emotional. Emotions are welling up in me. And when I say emotions, I'm talking about sadness, sympathy, because we've actually been there personally, been right where he is. So,
yeah,
he at this point, I guess, knows that he made it out alive. And this is the same young man that made the movie, directed Fruitvale Station.
Yes.
This is the same young, brilliant brother who him and Michael B. Jordan created the movie Fruitvale Station of Oscar Grant getting shot to death by a police officer. So he knows all too well how this could have played out. He brought it to the big screen for America to see.
Yep. To the line, picture yourself going into the line, filling out the withdrawal slip, having your state issued ID, having your debit card, having the transaction with the teller, getting your money, and going about your merry way. Okay? That's how this interaction should have happened. But instead, Mr. Coogler was falsely accused of being a bank robber. And the police were called on him. Imagine that. Imagine thinking that you're just going to have a simple transaction at the bank, but instead, simply because you are black and because the teller discriminates against you on the basis of your race, the police are then called. And we know that when the police are called on black people in this country, oftentimes the interaction is not good. And let's keep it frank. A lot of times it ends in us being hurt or even killed. So when a person calls the police on a black person in this country, especially for a false accusation.
So we got to recognize these people, Chloe. Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor, Amir Locke, George Floyd. Every one of these people were killed by police officers. They were completely innocent. George Floyd was allegedly trying to pass a $20 fake bill. Allegedly. They never proved it. That was just an allegation. And I don't care if he was trying to, even if he were trying to pass a fake $20,000 bill, it shouldn't have cost him his life. He shouldn't have gotten lynched for it. But I wanted to just show what you're saying is so true. When you call the police on black folk, it can go very wrong. So don't do it unless you have legitimate reason to do it. There have even been parents who've called the police on their mentally ill children. Police shows up and shoot them to death. We had that happen here in Dallas.
They are literally putting that person in harm's way because of the way that the police interacts with black people in this country. Oftentimes we don't get the benefit of the doubt. Oftentimes our stories are not heard. Oftentimes we are not seen credible. And even if we are the victim, even if we are the people that have called the police and the other person is a white person, the police will go to that person first. So this is the situation that Mr. Coogler is in. So the New York Times reports that the police were called, and when they first arrived to the scene, to the bank, they saw an SUV parked in front of the bank. The driver of the SUV identified Mr. Coogler as a movie producer and said that he was...
Chloe, we're getting comments here about the prayer. Jervy Hart.
I'm so glad you pointed that out.
Yes. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I did not, again, notice in that video that Mr. Coogler, when his hands came out of the cuffs, he prayed. I mean, that is just a powerful signal. Wow.
I mean, I'm just emotional even seeing that. Because again, he knows all too well, having been the only black director who's made a film, an actual film about racial profiling and police officers targeting and killing black men. This guy this young man, this brilliant young director, knew that God just spared his life.
Mm.
And they showed up thinking he was a bank robber. Not that he was just, jaywalking. They showed up thinking he was a bank robber. I'm being told we got some comments on Facebook. So let me just say a few things there. Just acknowledge folks. Sister Aldridge, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in and your continued support.
Thank you.
And yes, of course, my better half, your mom.
Hey, Mama.
And Sister Aldridge, she says, we're not seen as people or of value by white America. They are of the mindset that they can do anything they want to us, and it is supposed to be okay. I could not agree more. That is the root of the problem. And it's the reason why we have to assert ourselves and continue to assert ourselves that we matter. Black lives matter. Jerry Harper. If this is the same Jerry Harper that I think it is, I think he is a pastor. Tell me if I'm wrong, Brother Harper. But I believe he's a pastor, one of the good pastors. And we are so appreciative that he checks on us and tunes in and spends some time with us on Saturday. We hope we are taking good care of his time. We appreciate the privilege of his time. All right, let's go to some.
Waiting for Mr. Coogler while Mr. Coogler was making a transaction inside the bank. There was also another person in the SUV, a woman, who corroborated what the driver said and gave the same information. Instead of taking their word at face value, the driver and the woman are detained. And then
So you're telling me, Chloe, that when the police showed up, they had already confirmed with the driver of Mr. Coogler or the vehicle he was riding in, they had confirmed with two people that this is Ryan Coogler, director of the Black Panther, big time Hollywood producer. He's certainly not trying to rob a bank. All that. They had already confirmed that.
They had already confirmed it. The driver and that woman were in the SUV in front of the Bank of America. They spoke to the driver who, like I said, identified Mr. Coogler, said he was a movie producer. The woman in the car, she confirmed it, yet they were still detained. And you know what, Dad? I've seen some criticism. Again, people playing into this movie stereotype. Well, when the police got there, they may have think that was a runaway vehicle or that they were trying to get Mr. Coogler out. Look, I know that America, we love videos and we love watching movies, but as African Americans, we don't get the benefit of the doubt when we give credible information. The police, I mean the driver, Mr. Coogler's driver had already told the police that Ryan Coogler was inside. So why would they then suspect that the driver was trying to be the runaway driver to get Mr. Coogler out of the bank? He identified who the potential quote unquote robber was. So again, that doesn't make any sense. Those criticisms do not make any sense at all.
And he also had a badge on the right side of his pants. I presume they could have simply just walked up and just said, hey, to the teller, give me his ID. Sir, let me get this badge. Let me look at this badge. And if the badge matched him, then okay, this is probably not a bank robber. We probably don't need to do all this stuff to him. But as you said, we don't get that benefit. Let's move on because there's so much that you said here. I'm going to try not to stop every couple of minutes, but it's just so powerful, Chloe. And Yes. Okay. Great. So Reverend Harper did confirm that he is a pastor, a man of God. Thank you for tuning in, sir.
Police go inside the bank and they detain and handcuff Mr. Coogler. Now imagine that. You're simply trying to perform your bank transaction, and instead of getting your own money out of your own account, you are put in handcuffs. Imagine the emotional turmoil that comes with that, the emotional distress. And in fact, in this country, at least in the state of Texas, let me narrow it down. In the state of Texas, there is a claim, a cause of action that can be brought against someone or a company when they intentionally inflict emotional distress on a person. So in Texas, Mr. Coogler would have a cause of action against a bank for causing him emotional distress, humiliation, the embarrassment, the shame of knowing that you have done nothing, absolutely nothing wrong, and now you're in handcuffs and you're being walked outside of the bank. This is the situation Mr. Coogler was in.
Yeah, basically being walked.
Yep.
You know, like a common criminal.
So let's continue. So they walked Mr. Coogler outside, and apparently the officers were given a description of Mr. Coogler that matched the description of the man who was reported to have been trying to rob the bank. So when the teller saw Mr. Coogler, she called the police officers. She gave the police the description of Mr. Coogler because she falsely accused him of trying to rob the bank. The police then say that this episode resulted from a, quote, mistake by Bank of America, and that Mr. Coogler was never in the wrong. The damage has already been done. Because of this so-called mistake, because of this discrimination and racism, Mr. Coogler suffered the humiliation of being placed in handcuffs and being questioned as if he was a bank robber. So what are the legal remedies for someone in Mr. Coogler's position who has been falsely accused of trying to rob a bank or discriminated against at the bank or any?
All right, you all pay very, very, very close attention. Everything that you've heard so far is the appetizer. This is where you need to really, really grab a pen, piece of paper. If you're driving, pull over or go back later and listen. But here is where Chloe begins to dispense the law and what you can do. You don't have to take this stuff. We can fight back. And so she's getting ready to start laying out the basics of what to do if you are the victim of driving while black, banking while black, etc. So here we go.
Other type of company, a restaurant, a gym, etc. What are the legal remedies? Violations of this type fall under Section 1981 of the Civil Rights Act.
Let's stop there and let's let folk get that. 42 USC, that's 42 United States Code, Section 1981. It originated with the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and it's commonly referred to as equal protection under the law. So the first Civil Rights Act was passed in 1866, and then the United States Congress codified that section of the Civil Rights Act in this particular section of federal law. Again, 42 USC section 1981.
I want to get into that. Before we get into the law, let me remind you all that a couple of videos ago, we had our client appear on a video to describe his experience of banking while black. That's going to be linked above. Make sure you go check it out. His name is Preston Coleman. He suffered a similar incident of banking while black while at a major national bank. And he suffered the same humiliation, embarrassment, and emotional distress that Mr. Coogler presumably suffered as well. And we're actually now litigating that case in federal court. What does litigation mean? Litigation means that we have filed a lawsuit against that bank, and we are going through the process of holding them accountable in court. So I can't get into too many details about that case because it is pending. It is a pending lawsuit. But we know firsthand the toll that this takes on people to be falsely accused and have the police called on them. So let's go back to the Civil Rights Act. I want to break that down for you all. So Section 1981 was enacted by Congress in 1866. So let's put this act in context. We had just gotten out of the most bloody war in our nation's history, a civil war at that, where the issue of slavery was at the forefront of this war. And the question of who would be on the right side of history. So we had southern states whose economy was primarily based on the enslavement of black bodies and the money those black bodies produced versus the North whose economy was not based on slavery. Now, a lot of slave states, a lot of people from the South will try to say that the Civil War was fought over states' rights and it was a states' rights versus a federal rights issue, that when our founder fathers came over from England. Well,
I just got to stop here and say this is a speech that you could have given. This is a history lesson. This is a law lesson. This, and I don't want to relegate it to history because Section 1981, although it was originally written in 1866, it is still the law today. And many, if not most, of these types of cases, when they are brought in federal court, they are brought under Section 1981. But what you're brilliantly and very articulately laying this out. This should be just played in churches, classrooms, everywhere. They don't want to get the truth in public schools. So we got to say, okay, fine. We're going to educate our kids anyway. Here, listen to this video by Chloe Corbett as she explains the law and what we can do when we're discriminated against.
This country's founding fathers came over from England. My founding fathers are from Africa, but you know what I mean. When this country's founding fathers came over from England, they were escaping a monarchy. Right, they were escaping a government that had absolute
Nigeria, to be exact.
Power, and the people had no power. So this issue of the states' rights, which was more closely seen with being the voice of the people versus the federal government, they try to say that the Civil War was over that. Let's keep it real. The Civil War was over slavery and whether or not slavery would continue in this country. And so after the North defeated the South and the United States was united once again, there was the Reconstruction period, which unfortunately ended pretty quickly because of Lincoln's assassination. But Congress needed to establish the rights of these newly freed people. Because keep in mind, black people in this country were not considered human beings, much less a citizen. So all of the rights that white Americans had, we did not have because we were not even considered human beings by the government in this country. We were seen as 3/5 of a person. So now that we are free.
Got to stop there. Talk to us here, Chloe.
Man, just think about that, guys. The fact that African Americans, we were not seen as a whole person. We were not seen as a human being. We were seen as 3/5 of a person for the benefit of others, for the benefit of an economy, for money. They tried to take our humanity away. But thankfully, look, justice, the Lord is always over justice. And we had this war in Congress, and the 3/5 compromise was eliminated. But because we were not seen as citizens, our rights had to be established and codified in law. We're given natural rights, just being born, just the fact that God created everyone and made him in his image, but our our rights in this country had to be codified in law, and that's where the Civil Rights Act comes into play.
So this illustration, so you put 5 black folks together under the 3/5 compromise, they would only equal 3 people for voting purposes. Okay? Because the first black guy, that's 1/5, the second black guy, 2/5, and so on. You see my point?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, now, fortunately, after the Civil War, as you said, this was changed. Not only were the words of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 passed, but shortly after the Civil War, the 14th Amendment, the 13th ended slavery, abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment, in addition to giving us citizenship, in addition to giving us equal protection under the law, due process, it also expressly repealed the 3/5 clause of the U.S. Constitution. And by the way, the 3/5 clause of the U.S. Constitution is still in the U.S. Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there. It was just repealed by the 14th Amendment, but the language is still in the Constitution. All right?
It reminds me
The
of
government-
something. I just wanted to say, talking about the 3/5 compromise still being in the Constitution, Dad, it reminds me of something that Eli Mastow said, he went to Harvard Law. He's a constitutional law scholar. He was on The View, and they were asking him about the Constitution, and he said, well, the Constitution's kind of trash. Let's keep it real. And they all gasped, even the liberal members of The View. And it kind of is. Now, we use the Constitution every single day to get justice for our clients, on our civil rights cases. But the fact that there was even a clause in the first place that said that we were 3/5 of a person tells you that this was a document written by human beings and all the flaws that comes with being a human being.
Well, and he says that because the U.S. Constitution still has about 8, 9, 10 slave clauses in it.
Yeah.
It still has a lot of that garbage still in the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah.
Like, for example, not only this 3/5 clause, but also the fugitive slave clause is still in the U.S. Constitution. It's still there to this day. So that's why he would say that. Anyone who knows the Constitution knows that it's filled with a lot of garbage from days past. All right, let's go.
Needed to establish our rights, and that is where the Civil Rights Act comes into play. So the Civil Rights Act says, because keep in mind, black people in this country were not considered human beings, much less a citizen. So all of the rights that white Americans had, we did not have because we were not even considered human beings by the government in this country. We were seen as 3/5 of a person. So now that we are free, the government needed to establish our rights. And that is where the Civil Rights Act comes into play. So the Civil Rights Act says, all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory to do a few things. 1, to make and enforce contracts. Think of how powerful that is.
We need to say here too, so when they codified this part of the Civil Rights Act of 1866, by now the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments were also being added to the U.S. Constitution. But we know you can have the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment, or any other amendment, and to give it teeth, you need to actually pass federal law that creates causes of actions with remedies and with certain punishments, because we had the 15th Amendment for years and they still disenfranchised us. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until the Voting Rights Act was passed years later that we now were then able to vote without harassment and et cetera. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying you're absolutely right that our rights were really, really then protected pursuant to the codification of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. All right, and I think you're getting ready to break it down for us here.
Because we were not seen as human beings or citizens, we did not have the power to make a contract with someone. We didn't have the power to purchase land because the exchange of the land and the money, that's a contract. We didn't have the power to rent.
I'm sorry, Chloe, but I just can't move on because our ability as African Americans to buy that nice home is protected only by Section 1981. 75 words. If it wasn't for Section 1981, 42 USC Section 1981, private corporations, private individuals could say, no, we're not selling you a house. No, we're not entering into a contract with you. One of the biggest cases in the last few years was the case that Byron Allen, owner of TV Network and the Griot, and I mean, very wealthy, very intelligent dude. He sued Charter Communications. He also sued, who was it? Charter and Comcast.
Comcast.
Yes, sued both of them and got a settlement ultimately. And now today he's in litigation against McDonald's because he's saying these people would not give me television. They wouldn't contract with my company so that I can put my content in front of their millions and millions and millions of viewers. So he went back to a law that was written in 1866 and said, you folks need to do right by me because I'm the only black with a major television network. I'm the only black man who owned television networks. And they were refusing to do business with him. Now, a lot of blacks think, well, hold on. They do business with BET. Aha, BET is not owned by black folks. Not anymore. Bob Johnson sold it. Or with the station that Kathy Hughes, or the network that Kathy Hughes used to own, that neither is owned by Kathy Hughes and black folks anymore, I don't believe. I think whites own it as well. I could be wrong about that, but I believe so. So Byron Allen at that time, was the only black person who owned major television networks. And these corporations, Charter Communications and Comcast, would not do right by him. And now McDonald's is trying the same thing. But this brother will take him to court. He said that Coretta Scott King told him that that was the last frontier, that the civil rights movement had to move into corporate America. And Byron Allen has been doing it ever since.
A home, because that lease is a contract. We didn't have the power to purchase goods. Everyday simple tasks that we take advantage of now.
Chloe, I'm sorry I have to keep it. But Chloe, black Americans don't realize how tenuous these rights are. In other words, they hang in a balance. Yeah. All needs to happen, literally, all needs to happen is white conservatives and some of their black conservative colleagues, all needs to happen is for those folks to control Congress, the Senate, and the House, Okay? They control the U.S. Supreme Court, and they can wipe away these laws at will.
And what that means your vote matters. Who we have in Congress matters. Who we have as president matters. Who we have on the Supreme Court matters.
See, Coretta Scott King, Dr. King's wife, brilliant wife, said after his passing that freedom is never really won. Each generation has to fight for it in their generation. But a whole lot of African Americans think that these laws are permanent. They are not. We saw that with this last administration. We saw it.
That requires some type of contract. Newly freed slaves were not able to do that. Section 1981 of the Civil Rights Act established that every person born in this jurisdiction in the United States can make a contract and can enforce it. So if someone breaks a contract with that black person, they can go to court and they can have it enforced. That's the first right that was established. 2, the Civil Rights Act gave us the right to be parties to a lawsuit. So now we can be named as a plaintiff. So I could be plaintiff Chloe Corbett, where I am going to court to hold ABC Corporation accountable for causing my injuries.
Dred Scott. Dred Scott comes to mind when you bring that out. Dred Scott was gained his freedom. It was given to him by some magnanimous white person, I believe his doctor or somebody that he had worked for, and he went to another state, and someone said, "Hold it, no, you're still a slave," and he sued them. He sued them and said, "No, I'm not. I'm a free man." And that's when the worst U.S. Supreme Court opinion was handed down, the Dred Scott opinion. God-awful opinion. Basically, the Chief Justice, Roger Taney, some people say Roger Taney, said in essence, black folks have no rights that we white folks are obligated to honor. So they essentially threw his case out of court. In other words, you ain't got no right to sue a white person for any reason, Mr. Dred Scott. So get out of here. And so that's what you're bringing out here. That's what you're bringing out, that the only reason we're able to take people to court who has wronged us is because of Section 1981.
Before then, we could not hold a corporation accountable if I was injured, if I fell in their store, if they refused to serve me, if they discriminated against me because I'm black. We were given the right to present evidence in court. So me, Plaintiff Chloe, I can now have John Doe come in and testify on my behalf and present evidence. I could now present documents to the judge to show why the judge should rule in my favor. And lastly, this act gave us the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of persons and property as is enjoyed by white people.
Before you go into that, I think about the late Johnny Cochran, arguably one of the best lawyers, white, black, or otherwise, this country has ever seen. Mm-hmm. I read, and I think you read, Johnny Cochran's book that he released many years ago. And he talked about how when he started out as a young prosecutor in L.A. County, he talked about how although he was a licensed attorney, he could not question white people directly. Mm. He had to ask his questions through his white colleagues. There is I believe a clip, if I remember, of that actually happening. He's sitting in there as a young lawyer, and he would whisper his question to his white colleague, and the white colleague would say, "Mr. Cochran would like to know. Mr. Cochran would like to know." And this was 100 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. Okay? So when you talk about, I want this to be real, Chloe. I don't want this to be academic. I don't want people to hear you talk about this stuff and then they just get off this and just go on about their way, merry way, and just say, whatever. No, 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 no. Because we are black, because we are African Americans, these rights had to be carved out for us. And if we're not diligent, they can be easily taken away. This is not about disliking or hating whites or anyone else. That's got nothing to do with this. I am a committed, dedicated Christ follower. I hate no one. I'm passionate about what I'm saying, but I don't hate anyone. But I am diligent about protecting these rights that were so hard fought for, that enable me to go to the store and buy whatever, that enable me to live where I want to, that enable me to sue and get redress when I have been treated wrongly because of my race. If it wasn't for these laws, I would just have to shut up and take it like so many of our ancestors did. So I am zealous about protecting these laws.
Yes. And it's also that not about identity politics. That's the new buzzword that I'm hearing now. Identity politics, identity politics. Why you keep talking about being black? Everything is about black and race and black against white and all of this. Identity politics. That's the new dog whistle for saying we don't want to hear you all complaining. Shut up. Stop talking about racism and discrimination that is still in this country. This is not about identity politics. What this is about is our identity as black people and the continued discrimination that we continue to suffer, and what we need to do as a group of people to make sure that the laws and the rights that we were finally given are protected. That's what this is about.
And you never hear anybody saying that to the Jewish community.
Yeah.
Who do even more than we do, much more than we do, to make sure that folks understand that they will never again allow the Holocaust to occur. So they got monuments, they got museums, they got think tanks, they got different kinds of organizations, all for the purpose of educating, re-educating, triple educating, and making sure that the world knows that anti-Semitism is real, it's ugly, it resulted in the death of a lot of people, and no one critiques them. No one says, well, you Jewish people are, victim, y'all are playing victimology, or you all are, engaging in identity politics. They don't say that. Or if they do, they don't care, because they know if they're not diligent, they know what can happen. They know from history, and we know too.
Think about that, guys. Think about that. We were given the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of our persons. That means for the security of our bodies, for the security of our property that was enjoyed by white citizens. So now we can be secured in our bodies. Our bodies can be secure. Our property can be secure. The same securities that white citizens had, this act gave us. And all persons shall be subject to like punishment, pains, penalties, taxes, licenses, and exactions of every kind, and to no other. So people who violate Section 1981 of the Civil Rights Act, we can now sue them in court. So how does a bank transaction, how does discrimination at a bank against a black person, how can we hold the bank accountable under this act? Well, keep in mind, a bank transaction, when you open that account with the bank, you had to sign some documents. There was a contract that was made between you and the bank that you would place your money into the account with this bank, and the bank would give you access to your money to be able to withdraw your money, to be able to deposit money, to be able to trade stocks, to put it in a certificate of deposit. All of that required a contract with the bank. So when Mr. Coogler was denied that his right to that contract that he had with the bank to withdraw money out of his account because on the basis of his race, that bank violated Section 1981 of the Civil Rights Act. And he and anyone else in his position can file a complaint against the bank and try to hold the bank accountable.
And by complaint, we're not talking about filing a complaint with some agency necessarily. It could be a part of some of it. But by complaint, you're saying file a lawsuit, which we call a complaint.
Exactly. Yep. That is why the law is so important for African Americans. That is why we must stand up and make sure that we use all the full range of our rights in this country and full legal remedies in this country. That is why I admire our clients so much and other people who go out and try to hold responsible these discriminatory companies and people who discriminate against us simply for the basis of our race. So Section 1981 of the Civil Rights Act is extremely important in holding racist companies and people accountable for their actions.
Now, I want to go back to a part of this, and let's have a little discussion here. The section that says, and I highlighted with yellow, if you read the yellow part that I highlighted, all persons shall have the same right as is enjoyed by white citizens.
That gets right to the heart of it.
Right to the heart of it. But there's also, you could also read it, all persons shall have the same right as is enjoyed by white persons and shall be subject to like punishment, pains, penalties, taxes, license, and exactions of every kind, and to no other. Now, that is the intent of this law, but is it actually true? Do we have the same right? And I'm asking this for a purpose. Do we have the same right as is enjoyed by white citizens? It's in the law. The law says it. It's codified in federal law, 42 U.S.C. Section 1981. But is it happening? Are white people subject to like punishment like we are? Are they subject to like pains? And pains typically means, having to go to jail or something, or, some consequence. Are they subject to like punishment like we are? Not if you go into the prisons and you see a disproportionate percentage of Black Americans. Not if you look at the people who are typically killed. Most of the people killed by police officers, most of them are white simply because there are more white people in the country than everybody else. But it's disproportionate. Mm-hmm. So the Civil Rights Act of 1866, as well as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the ideal, these are beautiful ideals. America always write these beautiful documents, right? The Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, among them the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Beautiful words. Beautiful words. That's what Dr. King said when they had the March on Washington. He people remember I have a dream. But what he actually said, what he actually went to D.C. and said was, you folks wrote these checks. You wrote these words, and you've not lived up to them. You wrote Black America a check, and we can't cash it. It returned insufficient funds. So we got these beautiful words here in the Civil Rights Act of 1866. It's 42 U.S.C. Section 1981. But are they being enforced equally? They are not.
They're not.
And the reason, let me just say this and I'll finish. And the reason I bring it up is because that is the basis of critical race theory.
Yep.
Critical race theory basically says these race neutral laws that we have on the books have been inadequate in really fully guaranteeing the equal rights of African Americans. That is what critical race theory says. It doesn't say all white people are devils, all white people are racist. It doesn't say that. It says we have these books on the table. This is one of many things it says. We have these laws on the books, and they sound great. They're highfalutin. Oh, you ought to get awards for these wonderful words that you put on paper. But years and years and years and years and years and years and years after these words are written, we still have health disparities. We still have wealth disparities. We still have mass incarceration. We still have these race-based issues. And so the critical race theory people begin to say in law school, why is that? Why is that? Why do we have these race neutral, these wonderful words, equal protection under the law, the 14th Amendment? Why do we have these beautiful words and we still see a whole lot of systemic racism?
Now, some of you may ask, well, what about police brutality? What about someone who is hurt by the police or even killed? What can help hold the police accountable? Well, that's Section 1983. And 1983 allows plaintiffs to hold the government accountable for the actions of law enforcement. So the Civil Rights Act is really...
So let's look back at that Section 1983. This is, Chloe, as you said, this is the statute that we use to hold police officers accountable. If it's a private corporation, we go to Section 1981. But when it's the police or some other, as it says, some person under color of any statute, this is a person who is authorized to enforce a statute, an ordinance, a regulation, a custom, a usage of any state or territory. And so this is a state employee or federal employee, right? Or agency. And that person causes to be subjected any citizen of the United States or other person, not even a citizen. Okay, not even a citizen, within the jurisdiction thereof, to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws. That person who did that under the color of law, that police officer under color of law, that color means under the authority of a statute or what have you. If that person who is deputized, authorized by law to use deadly force, for example, does so in a way that deprives a person of the rights, privileges, or immunities secured by the Constitution and laws, that person shall be liable to the party injured in an action at law, suit in equity, or other proper proceeding for redress. By the way, suit in equity is a specific court. Unlike the most regular courts, some states have equity courts. And those courts are not so much bound by the letter of the law. Those courts are authorized to do what is equitable, to do what is right. Okay? They are not, all states don't have equity courts, but some states who do, that's what that means. Now, I go back to critical race theory. This sounds so wonderful. But in everyday life, this Section 1983 has been weakened so much by the United States Supreme Court, specifically with qualified immunity. It basically undermines much of what this statute says. And it is the reason why police officers know 9.9% of the time they can use deadly force on a black person, even on video oftentimes. And nothing will happen criminally to them or civilly. And the civil part of it is because of the qualified immunity. And the other part, the criminal part, is because they know the prosecutors are probably gonna work with them. Okay? May not even bring charges. Grand jury probably won't indict them, despite Section 1983. That's what critical race theory attempts to bring forward. Why do we have these wonderful sounding statutes and laws, and still we have systemic racism in this country? Anything before I move on?
To quote MLK, because they gave us a check that we can't cash. And those words and the metaphor of that, of what we're talking about in the context of banking while black, is really just chilling.
Yes.
To hold the government accountable for the actions of law enforcement. So the Civil Rights Act is really important, and it was enacted over 200 years ago, almost 200 years ago.
And anything I said about critical race theory is not to undermine the importance of Section 1981 or Section 1983 at all. And in fact, let me go back. I want to point out something that I didn't. Notice that Section 1983 originally was Section 1 of the KKK Act. because in 1871, this was during Reconstruction. The KKK had recently been formed, and they were terrorizing black folks. And these were some of the laws, as you pointed out, that were enacted to try and protect the rights of this vulnerable population of black Americans. But since then, there have been Supreme Court case after Supreme Court case after Supreme Court case after law after law after law that weakened some of this. And we know this, Chloe. We take these people to court, and we know if we don't do everything we can, they very well are going to get away with this. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. To hold the government accountable for the actions of law enforcement. So the Civil Rights Act is really important, and it was enacted over 200 years ago, almost 200 years ago. Okay. And keep in mind, Section 1981 protects those rights that I just said, to make contracts, to sue, to be parties, to be secure in our persons and our properties. It protects us against violations by both the government as well as non-governmental discrimination. Both are held to the same standard under Section 1981. So, guys, if you have been the victim of banking while black, if you know someone who has been the victim of banking while black, who was discriminated against simply because they were black at their bank, tell them to reach out to an attorney. Tell them to reach out to us. We will be more than willing to listen to see whether or not we can help. I hope that people will take what happened to Mr. Coogler and learn from it. And I hope that this video will help you to know what remedies you have under the law if you've been discriminated against in this way. Guys, this has been so fun to impart this knowledge. This is my first video by myself on the Defiant Lawyers show. I hope you've learned something. If you did, go ahead and click the like button. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will be back here on Saturday. My dad and I will be going live where we're going to give you the tea, honey, on all of the trending legal topics for today. One of the things we're going to be talking about tomorrow is
Like you just said, you brought the tea, honey. You brought the tea.
Thank you, Dad. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Because you've been doing this for so long. You've been making these YouTube videos for years and years and years and years, and really imparting such good information. And I would say you are a pro at this, at breaking down these legal topics in videos, making it easy to understand. So I wanted to do the same thing, and I was a little bit nervous for my first video, but I'm glad that I did it, and I hope that people will learn from it and get some really good information, and it'll help our legal community out.
Well, like y'all say, you did that. You did that. Honestly, you did that. Thank you for what you said about my efforts over the years, but you did that, and you're going to take this much further than I've been able to. You are your generation. My focus is typically on the young people because you all got to carry this thing on.
Yep.
You got to. So that's why I put a lot of focus in you young folks. Nuvi says, can't watch but will rewatch later. Excellent point. Thank you, Nuvi, for that comment because we want to encourage everyone who wasn't able to watch today, please rewatch this. This is going live. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. It's on LinkedIn. It is all over the place. So absolutely. Watch
And
it.
share it with your people. Watch it and share it. We want people to have this knowledge and to really know about the world, because that's when we're empowered, when we're knowledgeable.
We got some comments over on Facebook. And Sister Aldridge, oh, she is on top of it.
Yes.
Keep fighting the good fight, Pastor and Chloe. Thank you. Keep us in your prayers.
Yes.
She also says that is why qualified immunity should be done away with. Absolutely. If we can just get the Senate to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, qualified immunity will be a thing of the past. Okay.
Put pressure on your senators, guys. Call your senators. Call. Tell your family and friends to call your senators. A lot of times these politicians will move when the people start to speak up. So find out who your two senators are for your state. Call them and put pressure on them. Tell them to pass this George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We need it.
And I see Sister Abram Smith pointed out that the teller in this Ryan Coogler incident was black, and that she says, even our culture raises an eye at us and profiles us, a learned behavior. Excellent point. Excellent point. We brought it out in the beginning that it's racial profiling is not based on the race of the profiler, but the person being profiled. Okay? So wonderful. I think this is a wonderful place to conclude this. This has been awesome. Chloe, I'm sorry. I just gotta recognize the great work that you did again. It is just brilliant what you did. It should be required listening to, be honest with you. And so, we're out. Any closing comments, Chloe?
Thank y'all for staying tuned, listening to us, being part of our community. It really gives us a great joy to make these videos and to give you all this knowledge. We will be back next Saturday, so stay tuned for that. I think we're going to make the video that I did a separate video as well. If you want to watch it through, you can do that, and then you can come back to this video to get our comments and further our further comments on the video. Stay tuned. Next Saturday we'll be back. We love you all. Be blessed.
Next week we're going to be doing a giveaway. I want folks to know that we're going to be doing a giveaway, so make sure you come back. What we're going to give away is something that is costing through the roof right now, so I don't want to tell you exactly what it is, but you're going to really, really, really enjoy and be able to use what we give away. So come back next week so we can do that. Chloe did a brilliant job. We're out of here. Peace.